Welcome back to r/justnohoa, where people share stories about their crazy homeowner associations that make us feel better about not living in an HOA. And in case you are new around here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our awesome community. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled Condo HOA Find a Blind Man for Not Installing a Carpet. This story is not only about me, but about a neighbor that lives above me. The HOA in this story is worse than anything I could have ever imagined, especially when it started to send fines to the man that lived right above me. Now, I get having rules that make the general life for everyone better, and that on paper an HOA can actually look like a good idea. When it gets into reality though, things tend to fall apart and it does not turn out to be such a good idea. Especially when you are putting things like people's disabilities into account, which is the case of what happened here. Now, the neighbor that lives above me is an amazing guy who is also totally blind and lives by himself. As his neighbor, I am always willing to help him with anything he might need, but honestly, in this day and age, he can basically take care of 99% of the things on his own. The only issue is that he lives on the second floor, and there are certain HOA rules about living on that floor that were a bit of a problem when it came to my neighbor. See, the rule was that carpeting was required on those floors to help reduce noise to the people living below. Neighbor could not deal with the carpeting though, because he needed the sound of his cane against the wood to basically see where he was going. When he changed though, the HOA found out about it and held a meeting where I made sure to attend so that neighbor would at least have one person on his side. It was going about how you would expect, with none of them willing to listen to what neighbor was telling them. Neighbor, I understand that you say I need to have carpeting, but I have letters from my doctor saying that I need the wooden floors. HOA guy, but your doctor is not the one that needs to live underneath you and hear a bunch of noise because you want hardwood floors instead of carpeting. Neighbor, it's not that I want hardwood floors, it's that I need them. HOA guy, I'm sure carpeting would still be better though, because even if you fell down or something, it would not hurt as much as if you fell on wood. I cannot believe that this guy actually said that and decided to use this as my cue to step in and make something perfectly clear. Me, hello, excuse me, I am XYZ and I live here. I hear no noise coming from his apartment since he changed the hardwood floors. So, bothering the neighbors below him cannot really be your excuse, since that is me and I'm not making a single complaint about it. My comments still did not seem to sway them, and they ended up giving him fines and continuing to give them and having them stack up against neighbor for as long as he didn't pay them and change his flooring back. I spoke to him afterwards and told him that personally I would not pay them, and if they wanted to take me to court I would counter-sue for harassment. He thanked me for showing up to defend him because the HOA had many more people on their side than he did on his. I guess he took my advice because the next thing I heard was them trying to work out some kind of deal with him because their lawyer did not want to have to take this to court. He stood his ground though and refused to give them a single penny or change his flooring, so they ended up going to court to try and get the HOA fees from the neighbor. It was clear why their lawyer did not want this to have to go to court, because usually a jury does not want to find in favor of an HOA, especially when they are trying to go after someone with a disability. I made sure that I was going to show up and make a clear statement that as the tenant below him, I heard no additional noise since the floors were changed and made zero complaints about it. Honestly though, he really did not need me making that statement because of everything he had to show harassment from the HOA. So in the end, he ended up suing them for harassment and violating the Americans with Disabilities Act that protects neighbors' rights as well as others. This includes the rights to accommodations like having hardwood floors even though he was living on the second floor. Apparently, this was not the kind of law someone wants to mess with because of the level of harassment they gave the neighbor, including trying to sue him, which they obviously could not hide to a court of law. He ended up winning without the HOA having a foot to stand on. He got $1.2 million and he was sure that after that they were going to leave him alone. It was enough that he could honestly buy a house anywhere he wanted, but he really liked his condo, so he decided he was just going to stay there anyway. The HOA changed drastically after that, and while it still existed, they were a lot more wary to try and fine other people for every little thing. I'm pretty sure their lawyer warned them that they couldn't afford any more lawsuits, so basically the HOA existed only in name without the power to really back them up. I'm sure if someone did something really wrong, they would step in and fix it like an HOA is actually supposed to behave, but things are pretty quiet here. I really don't know what they were thinking when they started all of this nonsense instead of just taking neighbor's doctor's note and letting him have the floors like he needed, since it was bothering literally nobody. I think they probably were worried about the floors getting damaged and the resale value going down. Or maybe they just thought that if someone had a disability, they were going to roll over instead of fighting back. Being blind though did not make the neighbor a wimp, and they learned a little bit too late that he was willing to get his revenge even if it took some lawyer fees and nearly bankrupting the HOA he lived in. I still live under him and I still have yet to hear any amount of difference in the noise level since he got the carpeting replaced with wood floors. Maybe it does not do anything at all, or maybe he is just a quiet guy that does not stomp on his floor. I think the funniest thing was now that he has this money, suddenly people were siding with the HOA before, now all suddenly want to be friends with the neighbor. Most of them have no idea how to act around a guy who cannot see, and try to help him with things that he is more than capable of doing himself and is very vocal that he can do. They think if they help him or something, he will give them a chunk of money like he doesn't know any better or something. One guy even pretended he was me, but his voice was obviously so different that neighbor knew right away that he was trying to pull a fast one and told him to get lost. Even after all, that people still don't give neighbor the credit he deserves as being just as capable as everyone else and wanting to be left alone like everyone else. And yeah, ripe stars, since we have read quite a few stories now about HOAs messing with the ADA, you would think at some point that the HOAs learn about this, but apparently some HOAs still like to discriminate, especially against people with disabilities. Let's hope they learn their lesson at some point. In addition, if you have watched until here, I would really appreciate it if you could post some star emojis in the comments. And if you want to go the extra mile, it would be absolutely amazing if you could also like the video if you enjoy my content. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one was posted on our own subreddit r/ripe stories by user lovebuckhucks, and it is titled Changes. Have you, my dear readers, ever had a moment in your life where you palm slap your own forehead and think, oh my god, why? Why just why? Well, my dear readers, 7 months after our transplant to the East Coast and my return from another grueling African assignment, we were given orders to transplant to the, wait for it, West Coast. Yes, my levels of exasperation and frustration reached a level of 3 million on the Scoville index. I was even starting to question my own sanity. I was given 20 days to make the westbound move. How bloody generous. I broke the sad news to my beloved son. His response? Neat, mom, now I can visit the West House Mouse and I can tell you which one I like most. These very important questions in his world must be answered, so we were packed up in a double-boxed semi and I found a friend who had a CDL who could do the drive and we would follow in our vehicle. I did not want a repeat of the last move. We said our goodbyes to all our Eastie besties and took off down the road, always traveling on southern roadways far away from a certain state that holds sorrowful memories. We made Texas in 2 days when my lead driver pulled onto a southern-bound highway. When we pulled into a small town to refuel, my driver said we were going to have to stay there a couple of days. I stared at him in disbelief. He went on to say, "You guys seem to need a break from the stress, and it is still quite warm, so we are going to take a day and play in the water." I was pondering what forms of punishment I wanted to inflict on this person. I wondered if I could find a padded suit so I could beat the ever-loving snot out of him. My head was spinning a million miles an hour. He smiled at me while my precious son was bouncing like Tiger from Pooh's corner, squealing in excitement like little piglet. Well then, looks like the answer is yes. He finishes, "How can I say no? I'm always having to tell my beloved son no for one reason or another related to work, something that to this day I have regrets over." He got permission to park our semi in the back parking lot, put on double locks, and he blindfolded both of us and drove us to a motel that belonged to what turned out to be a very famous water park that I've never heard of. Turned out my driver used his connections to get us 2 rooms for the park. They were booked a year in advance at that time, and after we ate dinner at a rather fancy restaurant, we headed to catch our sleep. The next morning, what we were met with was the distinct sensation that we had somehow been transported to another world. This water park turned out to be acres on top of acres, along with more acres of water activities and food courts offering foods from other countries. After dining on some of the most delicious pastries and breakfast feats, my precious son and I bought water suits, towels and sun cream. What followed, my dear readers, was 2 days of complete euphoric fun in the sun on the water, tube rides down rivers, boat rides, water slides and more. I would secretly admit to you, my dear readers, I really pondered whether or not to stay a 3rd day. It was that fun. But orders are orders. We piled our furry and feathery family members and our well-toasted bodies into our vehicle the next morning and met our semi to continue on. There we were, 2 lobsters and a darker-hued little boy. We were quite a pretty picture. My son said, "Well, Mom, now you can say you are red-skinned and everyone will know what you are saying." We busted up laughing so long and loud, the weenies were howling and the kitties were meowing, the birdies were screaming. Really good times. We pulled into a New Mexico way station, got out to stretch. The officers asked us if we had broken down. "Because, ma'am, you are as red as a lobster. Are you in pain? Do you need paramedics?" We started laughing again when my son broke the laughter by, "My mom is just a redskin. We need to put her feather back in her hair. That's all." I lost it after that. I swear I almost weed myself laughing so hard. Just then my driver walked up to us as we were in tears laughing and he said, "Now I know nothing is wrong, but what's so funny?" My son answered him between laughter, "Mom's a redskin," and then proceeded to do the Indian dance and popping his mouth while wooing. There we were, cops, the 3 of us, our animal family members, all laughing our guts up. After the laughter finally died down and we somewhat regained our composure, one of the cops asked, "That was all nice, but I don't get it. What was so funny?" My son blurted out, "Mom and I are part American Indian, but now she is finally red-skinned." Further laughter ensued. Oh my dear readers, laughter is good for the soul. We asked the officers for recommendations for a delicious lunch. They sent us to a Tex-Mex restaurant that offered us some of the most delicious foods, or maybe it was because we were all starving by that point, we have had in a very long time. They made the flour tortillas in the center of the restaurant. It was truly a delicious respite. And I now have a new favorite Tex-Mex dish, which was chicken chimichangas. We were well and truly stuffed for Turkey Day. We hit the West Coast with 5 days to spare, regretted not staying at the water park for more days. My driver helped us unload into our new home. We took him out for a fast dinner as he had to catch his flight home back to his sweet wife. We thanked him profusely and then watched him off, getting back to life. My girlfriend Autumn and her family were also transplanted to my area. We ended up 3 houses from each other. Her hubby was waiting for transfer orders to come through for the base close to us. I got orders to go to Asia. Autumn couldn't go. She was 6 months pregnant by then. Now, dear readers, post-war Asia in that time was scary. There was always a constant fear of live fire. What we witnessed made us pray daily for God's holy day of retribution. It was truly heartbreaking, man's inhumanity to mankind. I would spare you, dear readers. I'll not share with you the nightmares my unit witnessed those weeks. We flew out of the country in mixed emotions of exhaustion, disbelief, depression, and humbled we were the lucky ones who got to leave that godforsaken corner of the world. The tears we cried were immeasurable. When we finally hit US airspace, I could only think about my beloved son, and I only wanted to wrap my arms around him and never let him go. Now, life in California is much like living in another country. Autumn and I would go shopping and see women caked in makeup, drenched in jewels, and robed in poor dead animals. We were both down-to-earth kind of girls, and shopping trips were more like comedy shows for us. Autumn and I spent the next few years taking our unit assignments and doing earthquake, tornado, firestorm, and hurricane assignments. Autumn got certified for fire flights, meaning she flew water or fire retardant dump planes into fires. Then one afternoon, we were called to fly into Central California for an earthquake assignment. We packed a cargo plane with medical supplies, food and water, and then took off. Autumn had a look in her eyes and lipped the words, "This is a big one." We landed at an airport miles and miles away from the impact zone, so we had to reload into transport trucks. When we finally made it to our assigned staging area, there were still aftershocks popping off. I remember looking to Autumn and telling her, "Time to go black." She shook her head affirmatively, and we got busy doing what we do so well. We had mass injuries to handle and expected mass casualties. We had to be in constant watch for landslides, fires, and live wires. The tsunami sirens were also lit. Because of broken sewer and water lines, we also had to watch for sinkholes and land liquefaction. Because of all of these risks, our trucks moved cautiously through areas. The truck Autumn and I were in somehow ran into a weak area in a roadway that gave way under our front tires. Our truck was overloaded with supplies, so the truck ended up teetering. We jumped out and called in for an assist. Our savior came in the name of tow truck operator. Oh my god, dear readers, this tow trucker was a chiseled man, and for a few seconds I swore I was looking at Zeus' earthly son. Chiseled face, sandy curls of hair, and muscles everywhere. I went into immediate stupid mode, you know, dear readers, that wobbly kneed, fainty giggly and helpless damsel in distress mode. Autumn was watching me. She just kept shaking her head and palm slapping her forehead. She lightly punched my shoulder and said, "Cheer up, buckaroo, he is probably married." I came back to my senses and hid behind Autumn in shame. When the son of Zeus finally got our truck pulled out and safely on solid roadway, we climbed into the truck to get back on our way. We were 10 men holding onto the back and 4 in the cab to do what we do so well. In the early hours of the next day, we were given 6 hours R&R to grab chow and sleep. Before Autumn closed her eyes, she handed me a piece of paper and told me to call the number when we wake up. I could not believe it. Autumn asked the son of Zeus for his personal number. Well, my dear readers, it turned into a whirlwind relationship, and after months of dating and getting Autumn's approval, he took my sweet son and I to meet his parents and family. They were a large family of 3 daughters and 4 sons. Son of Zeus was the baby of the family, the last to marry off. They were a down-to-earth family of men either working on trucks or towing, a family business. His family took us in with open arms, animals and all. Son of Zeus and I had a meeting with my superior to give them a heads up on our intentions, and a wedding date was set. Son of Zeus found a building to open his own towing service, and we started out anew. Over the next few years, Autumn was reassigned to the East Coast, and I assumed an interim lead deputy director's role as our deputy director had passed away. Son of Zeus grew his tow company and even had a brother working for him. Those two bought an old fire truck with a ladder and refitted it with a hook they could then rotate. They were doing high-end vehicle repos by then. I will fast forward this part of remembrance. Dear readers, life in and of itself is always fluid, always changing and evolving. We cannot control our surroundings or those around us, we can only control ourselves. Life is full of happiness and sorrows. Life's challenges and how we choose to handle them are what can make or break us. I grew up on an Indian reservation. It was a way of life that taught me to be resilient, strong and self-reliant. It taught me that this earthly life was never meant to be permanent. Even still, I've never been one to deal with loss of life. It is my kryptonite. So with this in mind, I would skip almost 2 decades to close the chapter of life with my beloved son of Zeus. I will share a few more stories of remembrances, but to save myself from my heartache, I will not share any more of my beloved other than the following. One night I had police at my door, my world came crashing down before my eyes. My beloved son of Zeus was no more, he was shot and killed while on a high-end repo. After the funeral, I begged my superiors to be reassigned with Autumn. It meant a loss of title, but I did not care. I needed out, I gave the business to his brother, wished him well and his family as well. And then we left California, bound for Texas. When we arrived in Texas, I was in pieces, completely shattered. Autumn and her family helped me get back on my feet and find my senses again. But nothing would ever truly feel the same again. My dear readers, I implore you, please tell your loved ones daily that you love them. Burn those words into the deep recesses of their memories, because we never really know how long we will have them with us. Cherish every moment with them as if it is the last. God bless. And thank you very much, Love Bughugs, for sharing this very emotional and important story with us. And indeed, the advice you gave us in the last sentence is true. That is definitely something everyone should live by. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.